welcome to the JBJ podcast. I'm excited as always. My name is Willis Johnson, and today with us we have Austin Hood. That has a name connotation. Austin's from the hood. Austin's in the hood. Boys in the hood. I mean, I don't really know. Let's just talk about first.
We want to get started with the name.
Let's just talk about the name Austin. First of all, is it after the city or what?
Yes, Austin is after the city. That is, my dad grew up in that area, and he went to University of Texas there in Austin, and so they love that city. And he met my mom there, so they both love that city, and yet never after they left after college, never came back.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of get that because Austin will do that to you.
Yeah, it can.
And you went to the University of Texas as well?
I did, yes. And I was the one, I liked to stay there actually after graduation for a bit.
What I find interesting about that too, so there's this kind of grandfather thing. If your family member went to UT, the expectation is for you to go to UT. So was that the expectation all along for you to go to UT?
Actually, no. My parents were very clear that I could go wherever I wanted to. For some reason, I had in my head that I want to go to Michigan when I was in high school. I don't know why either, but I think I was very much ready to get away from home. And my parents said that was just fine. But if I wanted the Hood scholarship, I would need to go to somewhere in Texas. It had to be a public school in Texas. And so suddenly I was like, oh, I think I'll go somewhere in Texas then.
Kind of went off.
Yes. Yeah. So
good choice.
Yes. Yeah. I do not regret it.
So right now you are running our government relations department. Government and politics and business. How did you get there? What intrigued you at this age, at 30-ish, to be in business, politics, and government relations? What?
That is a good question. When I was in high school, I thought that maybe I would want to be elected. I thought I would like to run for office. And so when I went to college, I majored in political science. I got an internship at the state capitol, which turned into a job with a state legislator. And I even ran a couple of her campaigns. And after I did all of that, I learned that I do not, in fact, want to be an elected official. They deal with a lot. And I was like, wow, I do not have thick enough skin to be an elected official.
I think that's two things to think about. Do you have thick enough skin? And two, you're never really off. You're always on. And you were not ready to deal with either.
No, I need to still be able to go to the grocery store in like sweatpants and like with my hair messy and that be okay. Rather than someone, recognizing me and wanting to talk about, the power grid or something while I'm just trying to get some, bagel bites.
I'm not quite sure I could tell this story, Austin. So when you said that, my mind clicked. I was with a very popular elected official. And I had been in a recreational mode with this particular elected official. And after we had finished this recreational activity, this elected official was in a relaxed position. But this elected official was recognized. And so now all of a sudden, now remember, I can't be very descriptive, but the elected official was pretty relaxed. And there were two people talking to the elected official about an issue that they needed that elected official to address. My point is, they're never off.
No. What a time to catch somebody as well. Two very different ways that could go.
I probably should stop talking about that before I call a name, but that's the business that you're in now. You deal with these elected officials. You were recently in Houston with the mayor of Houston. You were in Fort Worth with the former mayor, Betsy Price. I mean, what have you found by interacting with these elected officials or with Mayor Johnson here in Dallas?
The best of them are always very good at making you think that they already know you. I had not. I mean, I've certainly passed some of them in the hallways in the Capitol before when, Mayor Turner was Representative Turner. However, there's no way he recognized me from Adam. But as soon as I come up and I say, hello, Mr. Mayor, and like he is already, grabbing my hand, he's like, yes, it's great to see you again. It's always great to see you again. It's never great to meet you unless you've already said this is your first time to meet them. And it's very clear the practiced ones that are very good at already putting you at ease, even with somebody that I know the tricks of the trade and, how they're supposed to interact. Even some of them are easily able to put me at ease. And it's a good tool for them to have.
When I hear that, I think about President Obama. Several years ago, it's been quite a few years ago, President Obama was candidate Obama, and he was running for office. And I had been invited to this event where he was. And at the last minute, my wife said, hey, I want to go. And so, but she was not on the list. But long story short, she gets in. And so candidate Obama is being, he's shaking hands and talking to each individual that's in the room. And then he gets to my wife and he says, hi, Sophia, how are you? And she goes, well, he knows my name, but she forgot. There's a name tag. There's a name tag. But the way he said it was like, we're so he had that also, that charisma. So the politicians seem to have this charisma, this charismatic nature in them that make them special.
I think that it is a skill that most of them have already mastered before they get elected. I think that's probably one of the main reasons they can get elected. And I think that, you being able to hear the most beautiful sound in the world, your own name, is a big deciding factor to be like, okay, well, I know this person personally. That person will now get my vote, my endorsement, my advocacy. So I think that the person-to-person game for a politician is extremely important, something that a lot of people don't realize, I think.
Can we do without politics?
No, not in a democracy.
Explain.
I think that in a democracy, especially in a representative democracy that we're in, you need to have an easy way to identify yourself, not just political party, but like in different issues. You need to have shortcuts for both voters to be like, who agrees with me on issues X, Y, and Z, but also for politicians to be able to be like, okay, I caucus with this group on issue X, and this is coming up, so we will all vote as a block. It strengthens your position, both in voting as a politician and in voting as a voter in the public.
The elected officials, some say, have gone too far to the left or too far to the right, and maybe the most silent group are the centrists, those right in the middle. Do you see any increased civility in politics in the near future?
I think that is going to depend on the voters. Right now, because of our two-party system and a gerrymandering system of redistricting that we've just gone through, that is putting all of the power in the vote of the primary voter. So only people that come out to vote in the primaries are being heard, and the people that are doing that are always on the further extremes of the party. A centrist is less likely to go out to vote in a primary, or will, doesn't know which one to choose. And I think for civility to increase, it's going to be upon us as voters to make sure our voices are heard, not just in general elections, but also primary elections.
When you talk about redistricting, when you say that, I remember a situation where they drew a line outside of Fort Worth that almost included Abilene. You know, Abilene is 2 hours away from Fort Worth. Just how do people sleep at night with that kind of gerrymandering?
That is a very good question. I think that you have to, you tell yourself that you're doing it for the party. And so that you don't think about the other people that are being affected. You're thinking of, oh, well, if I'm a Republican, the Republicans in my district will all benefit if I draw it this way, or vice versa. And I think that redistricting has seen a lot more success in getting away from that type of thing when we use independent commissions, like they are used in some states. Not currently here in Texas, certainly not.
If I say, what is your most fun thing about working at JBJ Management, it would be what?
The most fun thing would be a sense of community here. I think that I came from a very small team where I last left, and half of us were in Austin, and I was in Dallas at times, and so there was a lot more separation geographically, and we didn't have as much interaction. And then coming back to an office here, it's a little bit larger, still not a huge team, but the sense of camaraderie that everyone has, we're all working towards a common goal. It feels like you can walk up to anybody in the office and, ask them whatever questions, or just sit down and talk with them about, their lives. It feels very open here. I really appreciate that atmosphere.
Even though there are Republicans, Democrats, there's the culture's different. There's a different age group. But yet you feel that you can have a conversation about anything and not get jumped on or screamed at.
No, it's very nice, especially coming from a background in politics. That is not something I'm used to at all. And so it is very nice to be able to do that and to be able to learn from everybody. So many different experiences here. We just had a very good lecture series that was talking about communication, and I was really encouraged to hear what everyone else at the office was saying about their own experiences. I was like, wow, that's something that I've never heard of or never, got to experience before. So it's really a good eye-opening experience in a very positive manner.
Bucket list? What do you got in mind?
Oh, bucket list. It's all travel based. I would like to go to every country in the world. Yes, even that country, whatever country popped into your head. Yes, I also want to go there. And that's obviously going to be a lifelong goal. But I started traveling 4 years ago, really actually doing it a lot. And I was like, oh, wow, there's, a whole lot out here. I was in Southeast Asia and Central and South America. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my free time. And so I wanted to make sure I had a long enough goal that would fill up my entire life.
Austin Hood is our government relations director, but he clearly is a globetrotter. And we're thankful to have him here at JBJ Management. That's our podcast for today.
You are now listening to the JBJ podcast, Generation Z.
Hi, welcome to the Gen Z podcast. I'm your host, Camron Powell.
And I'm your co-host, Lauren Taylor.
And today we're going to be talking about Gen Z depression and mental health.
Yep, I want to start this one off with a question for you, Camron.
Ooh.
As we are known as the most depressed generation, do you think that we are actually more depressed than every other generation? Or since we're so open about mental health, do you think we're just the most diagnosed depressed generation?
I think with anything when it comes to health, mental health, as you progress and get through the years, your diagnosis becomes much more readily available. A lot of people, and also as culture changes, people get diagnosed more, it's more open about mental health. So I think back in the day before I was born, things like that, mental health wasn't really looked at. It wasn't a topic people really cared about. For a lot of people back then, it was like, suck it up, whatever, you're fine, right. Dust it off, the whole boys don't cry kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I think while there's a lot more diagnosis now, I think we also do have a lot of like true depression. Sometimes I feel like people may be misdiagnosed for things like that, but I also do think that we do have we have a new set of challenges in our generation.
Absolutely. And our generation internalizes everything. We internalize so much.
We like to blame ourselves for things that we have no control over.
Absolutely.
And that drives us crazy sometimes.
It does. It genuinely does.
So, well, actually on this topic, I have a couple statistics that are kind of shocking.
Excellent.
You talk about depression and how our generation doesn't really cope with it pretty well. According to the CDC, the suicide rate among people aged 10 to 24 increased 56% between 2007 and 2017.
10 to 24.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, in 2007, I was 7, so I was almost 10. So in those past 10 years.
Literal children who are contemplating and carrying out suicide. That shows you how messed up something is right now.
Right. And like, while I think that every generation has its own set of traumas. And I think that while on the surface, our set of traumas may not, to the older generations, our set of traumas may not seem as problematic. You know, they went through world wars and cold
civil
wars
rights
and
movements
civil rights
and all
movements
that, yeah.
and like physical brutality and prejudice and like things that were really, really bad poverty, just all kinds of stuff. And on the surface, we have it all. You know, I've talked to older generations. They're like, what are you sad about?
Right.
You know, you guys have everything. There's nothing to be sad about. You have this, you have that. If I had that when I was growing up, you know what I mean? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think it's a different set of traumas. Like, while they grew up with a lot more physical things, we have a lot more mental issues, I think.
And so many extremes. The world's never been more polarized, it feels like, than it can be right now.
Yeah.
And so like, every time, especially on social media, like you'll look something up, you look every day and you'll see the news or whatever, and you'll see like, it's always an us versus them mentality in everything, in politics, race, religion, gender, whatever it is. It's always so separated, and it's really easy to get internalized and just like bogged down in the like, am I living up to what I'm like supposed to be, the stereotypes, the social media, the comparison you do with just every day, opening that app first thing in the morning, first thing before bed. The last thing on your mind, the first thing in the day is like, look how successful somebody else is. How can I be that? I'm not that. Therefore, I'm not worth it.
And I think, like you
Depression,
said, there's not as big of a sense of community anymore. No. I mean, I feel like that kind of really shifted in the past few years, but like even when I was growing up, like I went outside and played with friends and stuff like that. But I feel like nowadays, like people don't even trust people at the park. They're worried like they're gonna get kidnapped.
You
like
hear stories
sex
like people
trafficking.
getting like grabbed out of their own yards.
Yeah.
Like I can't like when I was growing up, we were always like had to be outside. We were like playing in the woods, doing whatever.
And we're still Gen Z. Most people think that we didn't have that growing up. We did.
No, we did.
We got the end of it.
Yeah.
We got the end of it, but we still had it. And I think that sense of community is kind of going away. And I think that's causing people, especially like with quarantine, it's causing people we already internalize things as a generation. And when you get to the point where you don't really have anybody to talk to, or you don't feel like you have anybody to talk to, and you start to compare yourself on things like social media.
Like the only contact with humanity you have is via like Instagram or Snapchat. Right. And where only people post the best things about their lives.
Exactly.
It's
social media is the only thing where what you see our generation, I think a big, like as part of the social media depression is that we think that what we see is what we need to be. So like we don't realize that people only post what they want us to see. You your favorite celebrities, you only see what they want you to see.
We know that when we're posting it, but we never think that people are doing that too.
Right.
I'm like, well, their everyday is fabulous, and I'm only posting like the one thing every other month that's like great for me. I don't know.
A lot of people get, like you said, bogged down thinking that, oh, wow, all I see is how there's 20-year-old millionaires left and right. And I'm working a regular job, or I'm still in school and I have student debt. And it's like, I suck. I'm horrible. And I think that's a big, just personally, and like people I know, like feeling unsuccessful or feeling like you failed at something is
huge thing right now.
Huge thing
Absolutely.
for my generation. And also, I think that social media plays a different role, like chemically in the brain. It's like, we're so used to, like naturally, even, in generations past, when we had like a stimulus or something and like, send dopamine through our brain and make us happy, it was momentary. It was spontaneous. It wasn't constant. Like I use the example, like opening a letter, like we, back in the time before social meetings like that, you get a letter in the mail, you might get one or a few letters a week and you're excited. Who sent this to me?
It's
Let me open it.
It's like rare, far few between.
Right.
Like it's an exciting thing.
I want to read it. I'm excited. Now we get letters every 10 seconds on our phone. Every time this thing buzzes, I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah.
And when I go 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour 5 days and I don't hear a buzz or I don't see a notification, then comes the fear of missing out, the FOMO, what they call it. And this is a term
that is our generation, like summed up. We do not want to miss a thing.
No, we are afraid.
We're online 24/7 and jealous constantly. We're always wanting to be in the action, or we feel like our life is like missing out on something.
Exactly. And it's toxic. That's why it's always healthy to take breaks from that kind of thing, and you really recharge as a person when you do. But like, I find myself, I don't even have to get a notification. I'm just wired to think every 5 minutes I should have been checked my phone already.
Absolutely.
Why didn't I? So I pick it up just to unlock it and close it.
100%. I do that all the time. Like, I'm thinking back throughout my day. I'm like, how many times did I just glance at my phone? Like, I wasn't even like looking at the time. I was just seeing if there was something there, and thinking about the younger end of Gen Z who grew up with like technology, these like 4 or 5 year olds
with iPads and stuff.
Exactly. Like, they're starting that even earlier than we did, and our end of the generation is already messed up.
Right.
And so just thinking about growing up being online like that.
And what I think, like I was saying, like with the social media and technology, it sends something through your brain where you're expecting constant gratification, constant serotonin. You're constantly happy, right? And so it mutes the physical world. Nothing else is as fun as that. Even if you don't necessarily find it fun, nothing else is as rewarding as that mentally.
Absolutely.
And so for us, it's already bad. But can you imagine, like, for kids who know nothing but this?
That spike that you talked about from that year gap,
10
it's
years.
about to get even worse. Like, for the next up to 2021, 2025, it's just going to, like, double, triple again what it has been.
You got to think, while their brains are developing, they're only knowing the instant gratification of playing a game on an iPad.
Like, it's hard for us to be alone sometimes with our thoughts, because our generation's been like guided to always need to be doing something, filling the void of what's like in our brain or whatever. But when kids at an even younger age start growing up with that, always needing to be able to like, look to social media, look online, have that sort of gratification that you were talking about, it's going to be even harder for them to be able to actually process their emotions and their thoughts and be able to be okay being by themselves for long periods of time.
And this is one of those things where I think the older generations don't really understand, because they don't have it the same way we do. They interact with social media as a tool. We use it as a lifestyle.
Exactly.
And so that's one thing. It's like I said, on the surface, our traumas they're not bad. Our struggles, they don't look bad. The
because they're not external.
They're not external.
Right.
They're mental. It's hard to actually fight it. And so that's what I say. It's kind of like social media and technology in general also adds to that depression, because it becomes an addiction. Addictions are often called depressants. Things like alcohol, drugs, they make you more depressed. And I mean, imagine going, without it for a certain amount of time. For some people who's really badly addicted, I mean, it's probably the same as like a drug addiction. And that is a huge reason why there's a high suicide rate among growing teens.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that, because statistically, men are more likely to be depressed and suicidal than women. So I just kind of wanted to throw that to you a little bit to talk about, why do you think that depression is it's affecting men more statistically than women, and then why it's so much harder for men to feel like they can seek help or talk about emotions just in the world that we live in?
I think that has to do with just society as a whole. Like, men are always told, boys don't cry, suck it up, be a man, that kind of thing. You're supposed to be strong, solid, a provider. Women, floodgates are open.
Yes.
Give me all your emotion.
Right.
I'll never give you any of mine back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Which is its own whole level of messed up.
That has caused not only for emotions to get bottled up in men, but it makes us not want to seek help, because we don't want to seem like that weak guy who needs to go to therapy because something traumatic happened in their life or anything like that. And I mean, there's a statistic here I have from gatewaycounseling.com. It says that, it says men just don't seek help. Only about 1/3 of people in therapy in the U.S. are men, while over 14% of men in the U.S. experience mental health issues. Very few of them get help. Only 60% of depressed men go in for treatment, but over 72% of women go in.
Yeah.
And while 9% of women take use of outpatient mental health services, only 5% of men do so.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about like my own friend group or people I know who have been in therapy or in therapy, like I can think of easily like 5 times as more women who I know have gone to counseling or therapy for anything than men, because like it's just something that's more socially acceptable for women to do, which is so messed up.
It really is, because it's like it's completely excluding the emotional.
And then women get frustrated with men for not getting emotions, and I'm like, this is what the world is doing to men. It's not okay. It's so sad.
It's really bad. And I think that, society plays a lot of roles in the depression of like our generation.
Absolutely.
And there's many different external and internal factors to that. Social media is one, which is essentially addiction. That leads into, I mean, our generation has a horrible drug addiction problem.
It's bad,
I
yeah.
mean, I've seen so many people either taking drugs or have died from drugs, and it's bad.
So common. You're like expected in college.
Honestly.
People will offer you drugs or whatever,
Yeah.
like randomly.
And
you're just
you're
like,
I'm good.
What?
And so, like, I mean, there's that, but there's also like growing, like there's school shootings. People are afraid of that. That wasn't that wasn't really a experience older generations had to deal with.
Yeah, and it's like very common. You hear about it
all the time,
way too often in our generation.
And so
yeah.
I would say the big things. Social media is like an internal. It's a mental battle. It's social media. It's addiction. It's things like school shootings. It's the feeling of not being accepted, and it's all those things play a role.
Feeling like you have to do it all on your own. You have to be able to make yourself okay without seeking help.
And a lot of people in our generation, they say that the class clown is the saddest person in the room. The happiest one in the room is usually the saddest. Yeah. And like, just for me going through high school, we lost someone every year of my high school year or class. Freshman year, there was a dad who like killed his whole family.
Whoa.
And like both of his son and daughter went to my school. There was another one of a kid who got hit by a car outside of our school. He died. And then I think it was in my junior or senior year, a girl in my class actually committed suicide. Like there was, and those are just one from each year. There was a few.
We're around death a lot more than just young people should be.
We're desensitized to it. We make jokes about suicide.
Absolutely.
We just act like
we solve everything with humor, and we think that it works.
But it doesn't.
It's like a temporary little Band-Aid on it. Like if I can laugh about it, it's okay. But it's just like internalizing it further. And it's really bad. It's really dark out there.
It is, man. I mean, at the end, like we kind of take everything in alone and we deal with it alone. So like, before we get out of here, what's a way you think we can improve mental health as a whole or help our generation out?
That's a big topic, but I'm going to say, I think we need to be, and this is going to be like my own hypocrite self being like, you need to be able to be open with people. Like I know if somebody is coming to me with their problems, I'm happy to hear it. But as soon as someone asks me about what's going on with me, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. Don't worry about it, whether I'm not. So just being able to admit when you're not okay, even about small things, it's a starting point.
Right. I think that's a great point because I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm always there for everyone else. And I never really open up on my own feelings.
We need to be able to be there for ourselves too.
Right.
It's a good starting point.
It's a great starting point. It's like we said earlier about therapists. Who listens to them? They spend their whole lives listening to everyone else's stories and everyone else's problems, but no one listens to them.
Be there for your therapist friends. Be there for yourself.
Make sure you take care of yourself first. You can't heal others if you don't heal yourself.
There you go. But
what do we know?
We're just a couple 20-year-old kids.
You are now listening to the JBJ podcast, Legacy.
So as I close, I have two questions, and I don't know if you can answer them pretty quick. One, how does the president get your number? I always hear that, the president called the family, your number's unlisted. How did the president get your number? That's number one. And number two, if you had words for the current mayor of Dallas or anybody who wants to run for mayor of Dallas, what would you say?
I don't know when he first got my number, but I will tell you a funny story. I was in the detail car. They were driving me around. This was during the Ebola outbreak. And I got to understand, the Ebola outbreak was massive in West Africa and people were dying in the streets. Okay, so this was a much more lethal thing than even COVID is now. So it was very scary. But the phone rang and it said unlisted, or, I forget that term it says. And I had the courage to pick it up and it said, Mayor Rawlings, this is Air Force One, okay? Can you hold for the President of the United States? And I realized he had my number. So he was up in Air Force One, so somehow he got it.
Yes, I want to know how he got your number.
I don't know. It's probably from some of our mutual friends that he got it. Well, I had known Senator Obama when he started running. I kind of bought him hook, line, and sinker before he just right after he announced, and had some events here in Dallas for him and stuff. So we did get to know each other, and he was a patient man with me because I have a few opinions. On the advice part, look, you just have to just believe that you're there for everybody else. I mean, you know, you're not there as mayor for yourself. It is truly a servant's calling, and your job is to try to get as many people together heading in the right direction. And that's what you should measure yourself every day about. And it's hard sometimes because, you know, herding cats is a challenge, but that's why they call it leadership. And so that's the focus. With it, we've got a great city. I mean, I think the 2020 is going to go down as a year that was the worst year in many of our lives. Okay, hopefully it'll be the worst year. I've had so many friends I've lost, died, not necessarily because of COVID, but just having these people die, and you don't even go to the funerals, and you can't be with the families. I mean, but I think Dallas has really, you know, done pretty good through that process. Not anything to do with me, but just as kind of a citizen watching, because there's a lot of tougher places in America right now. And hopefully we're in the mend, and we're in the mend as a country, and it's going to get crazy over the next 3 months. I will tell you, everybody put your seatbelt on. It's going to get crazy, but you know, sometimes that plane is rocking like this, and then you hit clear air and you go, you made it through it. And hopefully that's what's going to happen.
Mayor, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the 8 years. And then thank you for your friendship. During that 8 years, ups and downs, we developed pretty good friendship, and I'm just glad to have developed a new friend coming out of you being mayor of Dallas. And I think Dallas is a better place because of you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And Dallas has always been very lucky to have Willis Johnson as one of the voices. And you're a wise person, and you understand the big picture. So God bless you.
The JBJ Management Podcast with former Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings.